So UFC 292 takes place this weekend, and I'm going to be going through the whole card, starting with the early prelims, ending in the main event, just discussing all of the matchups on the card, and just giving a full card overview, sort of, and then going through the betting odds at the end of the video. Um, well, let's just take a look at the card that we've got here. So, it has taken a hit, unfortunately. This card was looking to be one of the best cards of the year. We had matchups like Henry Cejudo versus Chito Vera, Rob Font versus Song Yadong, Cody Garbrandt versus Mario Bautista, Ian Garry versus Jeff Neal, and we're not getting any of those, but still a solid card. Um, but let's just look at some of the fights. We're starting off with Karine Silva against Myra Moroz. There's a solid matchup in the strawweight division. I'm picking Karine Silva to win. I think her submission skills is just a lot more dangerous than Myra Moroz. Even though Moroz did actually beat Karine Silva earlier in her career, I do overall just pick Karine Silva to win this fight by submission or maybe a decision. Um, we got Andrea Lee against Natalia Silva. I'm definitely picking Natalia Silva here. She's the prospect here. She's a far better striker. I don't think Andrelli's grappling is going to be good enough to get her down. Um, and I do suspect that Silva is going to win by either TKO on the feet or just win a clear decision. We got Andre Petrosky against Gerald Meerschaert. Um, I'm picking Petrosky, but with not a lot of confidence. I would not bet on Andre Petrosky. He's a minus 244 favorite. Not a bet that I would be willing to make. But I am picking him to win. I just don't think Gerald Meerschaert is at the stage in his career where he's still beating these up and coming guys like he used to be. We got the Ultimate Fighter matchups: Brad Katona against Cody Gibson. I'm picking Brad Katona. I'll be honest, I didn't watch many of the tough fights. But from what I've seen, he looked very impressive in his matchups, and I do suspect him to win here. And then Austin Hubbard against Kurt Holobar. I do think Austin Hubbard's going to win. I think he's just better in the pocket, better standing up. Kurt Holobar won his fights from what I saw just in the scrap, just like going to war, and I do think he's going to get caught on the chin if he does that against Austin Hubbard. Um, but we got a banger fight next. It's Gregory Rodriguez against Dennis Tolulan. I think this is like the underrated banger of the card. I think this guy, either one of these guys is getting knocked out. I don't see this fight ending any other way. Robocop's a big favorite, as I think he should be. I do suspect him to win this fight. I think he's just more powerful on the feet, a bit more durable than Tolulan, and he also has the capability to mix in the grappling. Even though I don't suspect he'll do that, but it's something he could do. Um, those are the kind of, and then we got Chris Weidman versus Brad Tavares. Weidman coming back after a long layoff after that terrible leg injury. He's fighting Brad Tavares, who's had a bit of a rough patch recently, but I do suspect Tavares will win. We got Chito Vera against Pedro Munhoz. Um, a really solid fight here in the bantamweight division, and I don't think the odds reflect what this fight's going to look like. I'll do my in-depth predictions for the more notable fights on the card shortly, but I do suspect that this is actually going to be a really close fight. And then we got a short notice fight: Mario Bautista against Damon Blackshear. Damon Blackshear coming off a twister submission win just last week, and he's turning around a week later to fight Mario Bautista, who was scheduled to fight Cody Garbrandt. Um, and this is another one where I think the odds makers might have got it wrong. I'll talk about that in a bit. Neil Magny against Ian Garry. Pretty self-explanatory. Ian Garry was going to be fighting Jeff Neal. It was going to be a tough test, and now he's just fighting clinch fest Neil Magny, who I do suspect he's going to beat. But I'll talk about that matchup more in a bit. We got the co-main event: Zhang Weili against Amanda Lemos. Zhang's a big favorite. I do suspect she will make that tag look acceptable when this fight happens, and I'll talk about that soon. And then obviously the main event: Aljamain Sterling against Sean O'Malley. Really intriguing stylistic matchup here on paper. Really hard to tell what's going to happen. Aljo is a big favorite because, and I think the reason is, um, he's the guy that's going to have an easier time implementing their game plan. I think he's the one that's like, he's pretty simple: take him down, get his back, win. O'Malley's got to deal with a whole lot, and it's a lot easier for the grappler to beat the striker in these sort of grappler versus striker matchups. But that's the card there. I think let's just talk about a few of the names on the card. Like, I think the prospect of the night, you've got to go with probably Natalia Silva. Ian Garry is somewhat of a prospect, but the fact that he's ranked now, I just can't really call him too much of a prospect. I think the banger of the night, as I said, Gregory Rodriguez against Dennis Tolulan, is going to be fireworks for as long as it lasts. Sean O'Malley against Aljamain Sterling is like the fight of the night in terms of like the most stakes, the most intriguing in my opinion. Um, some underrated fights on the card that you might not know about. Mario Bautista against Damon Blackshear. I do expect this to be a really fun fight, and a closely contested matchup in the bantamweight division. Zhang Weili against Amanda Lemos has the potential to be one of the best fights of the year, or it could be a dominant performance from Zhang Weili. And then yeah, Chito Vera against Pedro Munhoz. I think it's going to be an extremely competitive fight. And I'm really up in the air about who I'm picking there. But let's just talk about a few of the more notable matchups in a bit more detail. We'll start off with Chris Weidman against Brad Tavares. I'm picking Brad Tavares in this matchup. I just cannot trust Chris Weidman the way he's been looking, or even with the layoff that he's had. He's fighting for the first time since I think early 2021 when he fought Uriah Hall and broke his leg. Um, it's not a good matchup for him here, in my opinion. I think Brad Tavares, although he's coming off a KO loss to Bruno Silva, I do think this is a solid matchup for him. I think Tavares is got really good takedown defense, and he's got a, for the most part, doesn't really get finished on the ground as well. So I do suspect that he's going to stuff the takedowns of Chris Weidman, which is where I think he'll need to try and take this fight. Um, and I do think that with the ring rust, I think that Tavares is so that Weidman's going to have going into this fight. I think Tavares is going to have a good time on the feet and be able to catch him and hurt him early and often in the stand up. And I think he's going to get a TKO in the first or second round. But definitely rooting for Weidman to have a good performance, even if he doesn't win. Um, let's talk about Chito Vera against Pedro Munhoz. This is a really competitive fight, in my opinion. Vera's sitting in a minus 200 favourite. I would not bet that line whatsoever. I'm a lot more confident in Pedro Munhoz. I think he's going to win. Um, if you just look at Marlon Vera's history of fighting, though, he gets finishes or he wins fights by dropping opponents um, and then hurting them so he steals rounds, or he just KOs them late and then gets the win because look at that Dominic Cruz fight. He was down 2-1 going into the fourth, and he just found a shot. Frankie Edgar was probably 1-1, but Frankie Edgar was winning quite a bit of that matchup, KO'd him in the third round. Rob Font was absolutely piecing him up on the feet, and then he was just getting cracked because Rob Font's got no chin. Like, these fights that he's winning, they're impressive performances, but I don't like how he's looking before he ends up getting the finish or before he lands those big shots. So and Munhoz is a guy who's historically durable as well. Like he rarely gets finished. So I do suspect this to be actually a better matchup for Munhoz on paper. Obviously, Vera's still got power for days. He can knock anyone out. But Munhoz has never actually been dropped or finished by strikes in his career at all. So I do think Cheeto's going to have a tough time, and Chito Vera has not won a first round in the last, I think it's 3 years, which is an interesting statistic because as a 3 round fight here, as a 5 rounder, I definitely would have picked Chito Vera, but 3 round fight here, I really do think that I think he's gonna lose the first, and I think Munoz is gonna do enough to bank a second round or bank another round to win on the scorecards because um, I think he's going to stay out of trouble, and I don't think he's going to get cracked with too many big shots. And even if he does, he tends to eat shots pretty well. He's taken shots from Chris Gutierrez, taken shots from Sean O'Malley, taken shots from Cody Garbrandt, these kind of guys. So I do suspect him to win this fight by decision. But let's move on up the card. Mario Bautista against Damon Blackshear. This one I'm actually really excited for. This is probably the most underrated fight on the card, in my opinion. Not many guys are talking about it. These guys were on the press conference today. Everyone was asking Magny and Garry. They were having a bit of back and forth. Aljo and Sean were kind of going at each other. Weili was answering questions. Tavares and Weidman were talking about like the comeback of Chris Weidman. And not many people paid much attention to Damon Blackshear and Mario Batista, but I think this is going to be a really solid scrap and a fun fight. Mario Batista sitting at a minus 233. I would not be betting that line at all. To be honest, I don't think he is that like spectacular. To be honest, it might sound a bit crazy to say, but if you look at his last fights, beat Guido Canetti, who's a 43-year-old bantamweight. He beat Benito Lopez, who was coming back after like 5 years. Beat Brian Kelleher, who's just not that good. beat Jay Perrin, took him to a decision. Jay Perrin's the guy that got subbed by Raul Rosas Jr. in the first round, and then before that he got KO'd by Trevin Jones. So if you look at that resume, you see, oh, 5 or 4 first round finishes or something like that. He's finishing all these guys in the first round. He's dominating everyone. He's an absolute monster. But um, taking Jay Perrin to a decision, beating 43-year-old men, beating guys that are coming back after 5 years off, and beating like Brian Kelleher, who, let's be honest, who hasn't beat Brian Kelleher, who's good. Um, I actually think that Bautista is his resume at least is overrated. I do think he's a very impressive fighter, the way he gets takedowns and does dominate these lower level opposition. But Damon Blackshear, after a tough kind of first few fights, he drew with Yusuf Zalal, lost to Farid Basharat. But that's a fight where it was pretty competitive, and then he almost had a triangle on him with about 30 seconds left in that fight. I think if he had more time, he could have finished that. But then after that, TKO'd Luan Lacerda in the second, and then just got a first round submission over Jose Johnson. So while not elite competition, so I guess I'm kind of contradicting myself. He is like he's coming into his own, and you can see an improvement with his Bautista. Like we've seen him get KO'd. Blackshear's never been finished in the UFC. Batista's been around for a bit. He got subbed by Corey Sandhagen. That's no shame, but getting KO'd by Trevin Jones, who was the guy that they brought in to fight Cody Garbrandt to just give him a win. Um, I know Batista's improved since then, but I don't think he's going to be ready for the competition, and I actually think he would have lost to Cody Garbrandt. Um, People acting like he's some like power punching force on the feet. His last fights, he subbed Guido Canetti. I believe he subbed Benito Lopez as well, and I think he subbed Brian Kelleher. So he's not flatlining guys, and he failed to finish Jay Perrin. That's all I want to say. And he got KO'd by Trevin Jones. He got uppercutted, so it's not like he's got a granite chin either. I think Blackshear's striking has looked a lot crisper in his recent fights. In Luan Lacerda fight, he looked really good, and even on the grappling, his black belt in jiu-jitsu showed some really good defensive grappling against Lacerda to get out of those knee bar heel hook attempts and just ground and pounded him. I think if Batista's rolling around for too many subs or like going for too many wrestling exchanges, I think he could get caught in the submission here. And then in the Jose Johnson fight, he showed really good offensive wrestling. So I think on the feet, Batista hasn't shown me heaps to say that he's going to beat Damon Blackshear. And I think Blackshear's being underrated in this matchup. I know he's probably going to have a tough weight cut fighting back to back, but he took no damage against Jose Johnson. I don't think he absorbed pretty much any significant strikes. Um, got a quick twister. I think he's going to be sky high on confidence, and he's just coming into this matchup no pressure. And I think that's the most dangerous kind of guy to fight. Is a guy with no pressure. So I do think Damon Blackshear actually is going to win this fight by decision. Um, as an underdog. So I've got two underdog calls here with Munhoz and Blackshear. Plus 160 for Munhoz, plus 185 for Blackshear. I think that's got a really solid chance of those guys winning. But let's move out the card. Ian Garry against Neil Magny. Somewhat of an interesting fight, I guess, just because of the back and forth that's been happening this week. But overall, it's a pretty straightforward fight to predict. Ian Garry should win this fight by finish, by TKO or KO, if he wants to kind of be impressive in this matchup, because you should be finishing Neil Magny if you want to be in the top 10. Because the guys that lose to Neil Magny, or the guys that go distance with Magny and win, they're the guys that are like around 15 in the ranking or outside the rankings. But the guys that finish Neil Magny, like Gilbert Burns, like Shavkat Rakhmonov, those are the guys that you know are going to be in the top 10 and going to be high quality fighters for years to come. So I do suspect that Ian Garry is going to win this fight. More rangy, more powerful, just more dangerous everywhere. Magny pretty much has just made a name for himself and stayed in the top 10 from just clinching people against the fence. And that's how he's winning fights. Um, Coming off a really boring, underwhelming performance against Philip Barreau, who was coming in like he's beating these unranked guys, but he's not doing it super impressively. He pretty much never finishes people. He finished D-Rod, but that's because D-Rod was being a fucking tard. So, I do suspect Ian Gary's going to win this fight. I would love to see a sub. He called submission, but he said he's looking out for around the 8 minute mark. So that'll be in the second round. So, yeah, Ian Gary by knockout. I think he'll land a big shot maybe on the break from the clinch or coming in as Magny kind of tries to move in to grab him for the clinch. But I suspect Ian Garry should win this fight comfortably. But the next one, the co-main event, Zhang Weili against Amanda Lemos. Um, I think this is a really good matchup for Zhang Weili, but this could get real dicey if she doesn't get the takedowns, and then it turns into a 50-50 fight. Right now, I see it as high confidence for Zhang Weili, but that's assuming she gets takedowns, because we've seen Amanda Lemos get taken by Michelle Gomez, um, Waterson Gomez, whatever her name is. She got taken down by her. She got the finish in that fight. She got subbed by Jessica Andrade and just physically kind of bullied. And that's someone who's coming off three losses in a row and just been dominated in the grappling by Tatiana Suarez and Erin Blanchfield, and then she got KO'd on the feet by Yan Xiaonan. So I do think Zhang Weili much crisper everywhere than a Yan Xiaonan on the feet. I think she's better than her. I think she's got maybe not better grappler than Blanchfield or Suarez, but I do think she's got the same sort of bullying pressure, and I definitely think that Zhang Weili's got more strength or physical pressure than Jessica Andrade. So I do suspect her to win this fight. I think she's going to utilize the grappling and maybe get a submission in the early rounds, maybe the third. But if this doesn't get taken down and it stays on the feet, Amanda Lemos hits like a dude. So does Zhang Weili, to be honest. So this is you're going to forget that this is women fighting if this ends up on the feet. You're going to be like, this is like a men's bantamweight fight. But I do suspect it to be a pretty fun fight, and I do think Zhang Weili is going to win by submission in the third round, is my official call. Third round sub for Zhang Weili. Um, but let's go to the main event. Aljamain Sterling versus Sugar Sean O'Malley. I'm picking Aljamain Sterling by sub. Maybe TKO, because he has been saying that he wants to kind of go for a ground and pound finish and just dominate O'Malley. But I just look at that Peter Yarn fight, and he's getting taken down so much, and he's getting held down for the most part. His only success in the grappling in that fight came from fucking cage grabs. So I do suspect him to lose this matchup in the grappling. I know he's going to have been working it a bunch, and I do suspect him to have a lot of weapons for Aldo when he comes in. He's going to be looking to throw knees, like a Marlon Moraes did. But I think Aldo is also going to have addressed that as well. I think he's going to know this guy's chance to beat me is to just catch me with a shot as I'm coming in or on the outside. So I think Aldo's going to be in on the inside range, in boxing range, and just be trying to shoot at all times. He's going to be all the way in or all the way out, waiting for his takedown attempts. So, but once he grabs a hold of O'Malley, if O'Malley can't stop the takedowns, and I don't think he's going to be able to do that consistently, at one point or another, he's going to get O'Malley down. He's going to get the body triangle like he does with everyone, and he's going to hold dominant position, fight for a submission, probably get a back mount, just end up on top of O'Malley and just ground and pound him away to a finish. So I do suspect that's what's going to happen here. Um, but it is an intriguing matchup in the sense that O'Malley is the quickest guy and probably the best striker that Aljo has ever fought. He fought Peter Yan, obviously, and was losing in the later rounds. But I do suspect if it gets there, I think it's going to be just he's going to hold the grappling. He held Peter Yan down, and I think Peter Yan's a better grappler than Sean O'Malley. He got Cejudo down, he got Dillashaw down, fair enough, had one arm, but I just see too many abilities for too many abilities for Aljamain to just get the takedowns and win here, because O'Malley's pretty much it's got to be like a Volk Islam performance for O'Malley here. He's got to just stuff so many takedowns, fend off just a relentless grappling attack, which is going to be coming his way, but I don't think he's going to be able to. But fucking hell, the way the UFC is going, O'Malley's going to sleep him in the first round, because that's just apparently it's not a rigged sport, but somehow just all these amazing outcomes keep fucking happening, which are just perfect for the promotion, like Ricker beating Whitaker and all of that. Um, but ultimately, Aljamain Sterling by submission, the official call. Second round, I'll go with. I think O'Malley will be decent enough to stop it in the first, but he'll get gassed out trying to fend off choke attempts, and he'll get subbed. And then Aljo will move up to featherweight and lose to Volkanovski. That's what's going to happen. But let's just go through some of the betting odds, and I'll just talk about some of the lines that appeal to me here. So we'll start off. Karine Silva against Myra Moroz. Silva is a minus 152, Moroz plus 123. Not a line that appeals to me for either. It's women's MMA. It's half a toss up most of the time. Um, Maybe the over or an under. I don't know. Like, there's just no bets here that look good to me. Andrea Lee against Natalia Silva. Money line on Natalia Silva is a terrible idea because she's a fucking minus 357. But I do suspect that a parlay adding Natalia Silva would not be a bad idea. But if you just say this is unranked women's MMA, I don't wanna risk it. Fair enough. Um, Andre Petroski against Gerald Meerschaert. Do not bet this fight. Gerald Meerschaert has a habit of just subbing fucking contenders that he shouldn't beat. And he's just got that crafty veteran kind of thing. I do suspect Petroski's going to win, but not in addition to any parlays or money lines that I would be taking. Um, Brad Katona against Cody Gibson and Austin Hubbard against Kurt Halabar. These are the Ultimate Fighter fights. I'm not going to be betting on any of them. I would not recommend you guys to bet on any of them. Because let's be honest, these guys are fighting low level competition in the Ultimate Fighter, so it's kind of tough to know how good they are. But both of them, Brad Katona and Austin Hubbard, are both around minus 170 favorites. So you could bet them, maybe parlays. I don't know. You could do a parlay with just the two of them, the Ultimate Fighter. Try and get that right, but not worthwhile in my opinion. Gregory Rodriguez is a massive favorite against Dennis Tallulah. I do expect him to get a quick finish and a KO. Um, but at minus 370, and the fact that he has been KO'd, he's coming off a KO against Bruno Ferreira where he just got caught with a big shot. His chin's not unbreakable. I think a lot of people saw him eat that knee from Chidi and Joquani, and then they think he's got a granite chin, but that's because it hit him here. It hit him right in between the eyebrows. And so that's the spot that you can usually take a shot to the forehead, but when it lands on the chin like it did with Bruno Ferreira, he has been KO'd before. So at minus 370 doesn't appeal to me, to be honest. There's no point betting money line. You might go Robocop by a finish could give you a bit better odds, but maybe just go the under. I would just, if you're gonna look at the, I don't know what it is, but maybe just bet the under in this fight. Chris Weidman against Brad Tavares. There's kind of the if factor of how good Chris Weidman's gonna be when he comes back. Um, Tavares is a minus 270. Probably wouldn't bet it. A lot of these fights on these cards have real ugly lines. Um, Chito Vera against Pedro Munhoz. Definitely don't bet Chito Vera at minus 200. There's no value. Munhoz as a money line could be decent. Munhoz decision because I really don't see him finishing. Um, Chito Vera. This is probably the most confident method of victory I have would be a Munhoz decision. So you could go money line that, or if you wanted to add some juice to a parlay, put that on there. Bautista against Blackshear. Again, I've just expressed that I do not think Bautista should be a minus 233. At plus 185 at Damon Blackshear bet, especially maybe by decision, but he ultimately could get a finish because Bautista has been knocked out before. But a money line on Damon Blackshear, I don't hate. Ian Garry at minus 526 is ridiculous to bet a money line on. Add him to a parlay, I do think he's going to win. You could go by finish, but Neil Magny's got a habit of just dragging guys out, so maybe not. Just go Magny money line. So just go Garry money line to your parlay. And if you wanted to just chuck some money on a Magny decision, it wouldn't go too far because at plus 375, you're going to be making money back if you win somehow. Zhang Weili at minus 233 against Amanda Lemos, plus 255. I do suspect Weili's going to win. In addition to your parlay, would probably be okay. None of these fights are really appealing money lines apart from the dogs, but um, maybe some sort of maybe an over. I don't see this if it's over 4.5, then go under. But if it's like a 2.5, I could see that going over. Fight probably won't go distance. I think it's a pretty good bet. But it might. You never know. And then Aljamain Sterling is minus 263 to Sean O'Malley's plus 207. Fight to not go the distance, I think, is the best bet here. I think it's a KO or sub for either in the first 3 rounds. I think the under as well is a solid bet. Aljamain by sub, O'Malley by KO are the methods that you're probably going to be looking at. But yeah, ultimately, those are all the matchups, guys. That's the card of UFC 292. It's a solid card, but unfortunately did take a pretty big hit. But really looking forward to it. Let me know what you guys think of my picks in the comments. Give me any bets that you guys are going to be putting down. If let me know if you agree with my picks. Or if you think there's like some bets, or you disagree with me saying to not bet on a certain fighter. But yeah, that's the full card. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one, which will be the full card recap on Sunday. See you guys. Peace.